Hey, are you coming to Provincetown's annual Women's Week in October? We've got a couple of fantastic workshops on the schedule you might want to check out. Lavender Dating, Navigating Dating in the Digital World is for women who want to date other queer women, but are lost when it comes to the world of online dating. This workshop is perfect for any woman, whether you're new to the lesbian dating scene or have been out for years, who wants to polish up their profile and set dating goals. And for you couples who want to work on your relationship, we have Strengthening Love, Building Secure Bonds for Lesbian Couples with psychologist Dr. Robin Cezanne. In this workshop, you'll explore attachment styles and stresses that are unique to lesbian couples and learn how to create better trust and intimacy. Both workshops take place at the Provincetown Inn, Thursday, October 17th, 1:30 to 4:30 p.m. Tickets are available on Eventbrite. Spaces are limited. Sign up today. Hey queer friends, are you ready to be inspired? Welcome to Season 5 of Coming Out and Beyond, a podcast that shares stories from the LGBTQIA+ community. Here's your host, Anne-Marie Zanzal.
So you're in the process of coming out and you're feeling really good, feeling really fine, but you haven't told your family yet. Or you haven't told a dear friend, or maybe you haven't told your spouse or your kids. Well, I have a guest today, and she has been on the process of coming out for about a couple of years now. She is the fantastic Sarah St. John, and she is the host of Lesbianas, Candid Convos with Later in Life Lesbians. And I am so excited to welcome her to the show. This is Coming Out and Beyond LGBTQIA+ Stories. Thank you for being here and welcome, Sarah.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am excited to have you. So Sarah and I were both at the podcast movement convention, and I laughed, Sarah, because I had about 7 people come out to me at that convention.
Oh, wow.
Men, women. It was like I'm the magnet. The magnet. Now Sarah's already out, but it was really sort of funny, mostly. So, Sarah, how I start this program is I ask people to tell me their story, and I would love to hear yours.
Yeah. So I'm 41 now, and I got married at 21 to a man, was married 18 years. We didn't have any kids, just a pug. And, I realized by the time before I was 25 that I was attracted to women, but I just assumed I was bisexual. So that's how I identified in my 20s and 30s. And my husband knew, he was fine with it. He thought it was kind of hot, the typical straight male thing. But it was like, well, kind of the tipping point was in 2020. I had met a woman that I'm pretty sure I fell in love with, to some degree anyway, but like really quickly. And she was a straight woman, like nothing ever happened with that, but the feelings I had developed, and like the three of us, my husband, me, and her, would go out to eat. And there was this one time where like we were saying goodbye, and I hugged her for like, I want to say it was close to 20 minutes. And when we left, my husband said, why don't you ever hold me like that?
Oh.
And that was kind of a wake-up call to me. I was like, the feelings I'm having for this woman, I've never really experienced before for a man. And so that kind of started even though I knew I was attracted to women prior to that, I thought it was just kind of a physical or a sexual attraction only. I didn't realize that I could have like a romantic or emotional or whatever kind of attraction. And so, starting in late 2020 into like 2023, kind of in those 3 years there, I was watching more lesbian stuff like the L Word. I was reading books and all this stuff. And he was kind of picking up on it. And he would even say, like, are you gay? Are you sure you're not gay? You know, stuff like that. And I would keep
Oh,
denying
no,
it.
no, 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 I'm
Yeah.
not.
And then the real turning point was at a podcast conference,
Mm-hmm.
the same one we were well, not the exact same one,
Yeah, I
but
know. A couple years
podcast we went to.
earlier. Yeah.
And so I met this woman for dinner who was also a podcaster, and she had a sex podcast. And so I felt like she was a safe person to kind of open up to about, because at this point, this was like March of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I was pretty sure that I might be gay, but like I had never actually physically been with a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And like a lot of people don't need to get to that point to know for sure, but like I kind of felt like I didn't want to end an 18-year marriage over a 99% chance. I wanted to be 100% sure that I was gay. So anyway, so I'm telling her my whole story, basically like I'm telling you. And it was a weird series of events. Like basically she's like, well, let's go to a lesbian bar after. I'll be your wing woman. I'm like, okay, cool. So we're like eating dinner, and the dinner included dessert, and I couldn't finish the dessert. And so I was like, hey, before we go, or, oh no, I know what it was. Let me back up a bit. When she said something about going to a lesbian bar, I jokingly said, because she's a straight woman, had never been with a woman, I jokingly said, or we can cut out the middleman and you and I can hook up. But as
Mm-hmm.
a total joke, because I'm like, she's straight, you know,
Was
whatever.
was it a total joke?
I mean,
Was it?
it was a joke in the sense that I didn't think she'd go
Well,
for
you didn't,
it.
you know, it was a joke in the sense you didn't think she would pick up on it.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And then she said, and I thought she was joking back, and maybe she was too. She's like, sure, why not? I'm down. But you know, I figured, you know, it's a joke. So I don't finish my dessert. I'm like, hey, I'm still thinking we're gonna go to the lesbian bar. So I'm like, hey, let me go to my room to drop off the dessert, put it in the fridge. She's like, oh, okay, well, I'll go with you. So we go to my room. I drop the dessert off in the fridge. The room I was in had like two queens. She
Mm-hmm.
goes, um, actually, let's go back to my room because I have a king bed and toys. And so I was
Wow.
like, oh, so you weren't joking. So anyway, so it was our first time for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that experience, you know, 5 minutes in, I'm like, yeah, I know. And then, you know, it was like a 3 hour ordeal. And
Ordeal? Is that the right word?
it probably isn't a 3 hour experience.
Experience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when I came back from the conference, the very first thing I told my husband, I told him about the experience. Now I didn't come out and say I'm gay. I just told him what had happened. And he said, okay, well, you're gay and we need to get a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
So like before I could even say it, he's saying it. So I think it was just kind of one of those matter of time type things.
So, okay, so you've said a couple of things in this story. And one of the things you have proven is that you can have a catalyst and have no, like, never tell her that you like have a romantic feelings for her. But you can have a catalyst that's just a crush. And that can start you on your journey, which is normal for some people. And then the other thing is the unexpected response of your husband. A lot of women, a lot of men are like bargaining, negotiating, trying to figure out how to do this. But occasionally, and I've had this happen to several of my clients over the years, their husband was like, they get it. They understand, oh, you're gay. You can't be with me because I'm straight and you're gay, and I need to be with a woman who is straight. And what was that like for you? Were you like stunned, surprised, relieved, scared?
Oh, it was all of those. Definitely
Well, yeah.
surprised. Because I didn't expect that he would. I mean, he had already been kind of questioning it, but I still didn't think that he'd be like to the point of being like, okay, well now we got to get a divorce, and like that's the first thing he says. And so, but part of me there was fear associated with it, like, oh
Mhm.
crap, this is getting real. And, I kind of wanted to like work through it or try to, because we had actually been seeing a counselor for like maybe a year-ish leading up to this,
Mhm.
just about other issues like communication issues and things like that. And I was like, I was the one trying to bargain with him and say,
Mhm.
um, can we, try to work this out? Surely there's something, that so anyway, but ultimately, and I think we did have one or two counseling sessions, but yeah, it was obvious that it just wasn't, this isn't one of those things you can really work through.
Well, yeah, I mean, okay. So I agree with you 100%, but some couples decide to stay together and both of them are giving up something. Both the woman and the man depend, and both I'm not going to say it that way. Both the straight partner and the queer partner end up giving up something if they stay together. And but a lot of times people realize along the line, it seems like you all came to this in a very quick fashion, that this isn't going to work. We can't stay together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I've heard that before where, couples try to make it work where there's a straight person and a gay person. Um, but ultimately, yeah, I think it was the right decision to go ahead and part ways.
Mhm.
And so I guess I'm thankful for that, that like in the moment it felt like shocking and fear. There was fear
Mhm.
associated with it. Well, a lot of it also was from kind of like a financial perspective, because when I when we got married at 21, I went straight from living with my parents to living with him because I went to
Mhm.
like community college. I hadn't gone off to college. And so it was my first time being on my own, first time. So basically, I never had lived on my own and
Mhm.
I had never paid my own bills like me alone. We always had joint,
Counts.
Um,
Mhm.
so it was the first time that I had been on my own, paying my own stuff with just my income. So there was a lot of fear associated with that as well. But then, like, also, what do I tell my family? And ultimately, I was able to tell them that we got divorced without bringing any of this up because they already knew that we had been in counseling for other smaller kind of things.
All right. So I just want to ask you a quick question before we move on to your family. Are you proud of yourself that you're able to pay all your bills and do all the things you do? Because that's one of the scariest part. It's for a lot of women, it's more about the financial piece because they've always been in a joint account. They don't make as much money as their spouse. Um, I'm enormously proud of what I have been able to achieve.
Hmm.
Are you proud of that too? Like, hey, wait a minute, I can do this. It's not rocket
Yeah.
science.
Yeah. So I am proud, and it was, he did make significantly more money than me. Like, uh, I technically probably didn't even need to work, um, but I was able to, make ends meet. Now, ironically, I actually just lost my job 2 days ago.
Oh no,
So, so
you're not
now,
feeling in this place, but at this moment.
yeah. So, but I'm using it as an opportunity to hopefully get my business off the ground, because like I've had a business idea for a long time, but it's been on the back burner. And so when I had a steady paycheck coming in, I didn't really have the motivation
Right.
or the fire under my butt. And now I do. Uh, but anyway, but yeah, to answer your question, yeah, it definitely was nice being able to have that, be able to pay my own way.
Well, I'm wishing you enormous fire. It's nothing like having to be able to do something. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Okay, so you come from a very conservative religious background, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So telling your family you were getting a divorce was a big deal.
Yeah, now that's another thing. I was surprised almost more so by my more so than my husband's reaction and wanting divorce right away. I was almost more surprised by my family's reaction because I was thinking that they would try and discourage me from getting a divorce. Because, according to the conservative Christian belief, is that, the only times divorce, hmm, the only times divorce is allowed is in the cases of uh, adultery, which technically it fell under that, according, even though
Yeah.
they don't know that part, or adultery or I guess abuse or abandonment. I think those are
Mhm.
the, and so because they didn't know the full story and that it actually did kind of fall under one of those, um, I thought that I would be given some kind of hard time about it. Like, well, are you sure you've really thought about this? Like, could you do more counseling? Um,
So your family was okay with it then, your divorce.
yeah, surprisingly, they seem to like some of them, for example, my brother and his wife, um, they didn't even know that he and I had been in counseling for anything. And they never even asked questions. Like,
Mhm.
basically, I told everyone that I was getting a divorce through email. And I
Mhm.
said in the email that it's a final and maybe it has something to do with the fact that I said it, it's kind of a final decision. Um, whatever. But and that I didn't really want to talk that much about it. But and they completely respected that, and they didn't ask questions, they didn't try to convince me to work it out, like any of that. And so I was surprised. So part of me, even though I think the whole being gay, and especially now that I'm in a relationship and all this stuff, while I think that that's going to be a more difficult subject than divorce, um the fact that they reacted or and responded the way they did to the divorce gives me some kind of hope, I guess, that maybe their reaction to this other information won't be as bad as I think it'll be.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, so if they reacted well with the divorce, why wouldn't, I mean, they may surprise you again, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I really love the idea of writing an email. A lot of my clients do that,
Mhm.
especially if they want to tell a lot of people at once and it's hard to get people together and all that stuff. And also, too, when you send somebody an email, you give them time. Like
Mhm.
sometimes people's first reaction isn't their best, or it's sometimes a knee jerk reaction. But when you give people time to sort of process and to think about what Sarah's saying, they are often a much better. And so I love when people, I think for those who have nerves around telling family, I think email is a good option because you let them know how you're feeling. Um, if they respond, great. If they don't, great. I mean, and then you have told them about a piece of yourself. That's really important, Sarah.
Mhm. Yeah, and I've for months now been going back and forth on how to tell them, when to tell them. My initial thought was, oh, I'll try to get everyone together. Well, my brother and his wife, they have three young-ish sons, 10 to 15. And so I guess they wouldn't have to get childcare because anyway, so I was like trying to figure out the logistics of, and then, but I felt like getting them together for some family sit down meeting would almost make it more of a big deal than it should
Well,
be.
it would make it more of a drama, and they probably think you're going to tell them you have cancer or something like that.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
people get worried when like, out of the blue, somebody says, oh, can I get everybody together? And sometimes it is unfortunate news like that. But people don't go to the good news. People go to the bad news. And
Mhm.
I know that maybe your family will not see this as the best news in the world, but you do, Sarah. And
That's a good point.
it's really good news for you because you are happier now. And
Mhm.
so, you know, so I like that big get bit, this is the thing. There is never the right time.
Mm.
Don't try to find it. The right time is when you feel ready. That's the right
Mhm.
time. And whether the right time is in a year from now or tomorrow, um, it's your time. It's your timing. You don't have to tell them, though they may stumble upon something and find out about it because you
Mhm.
are visible. You are on the internet. Sarah has 2 podcasts, and her other podcast is much more popular. It's Frugalpreneur. And so Sarah has 2 podcasts. I mean, have you talked about it on Frugalpreneur at all?
No. And they
Okay.
do they are obviously very aware about frugalpreneur. My dad listens to it, all this
Mhm.
stuff. And actually, okay, so kind of going back, so initially when I put Let's Be Honest out, I did on the cover art, I did have my name and I did have it was like a cartoon image of me.
Mhm.
And but I still figure like the only social media I have for that podcast is TikTok. And my
Right.
family's not on TikTok. So I don't have to worry about that. So I don't really promote the podcast on social other than TikTok,
Mhm.
and all this stuff. But I figured, yeah, I have my name on the cover, but unless they're like, okay, so some people at my old church, they knew I had a podcast about business and they couldn't
Mhm.
remember the name of it. And so they were,
Googling.
um, either they were Googling or maybe in Apple or Spotify or whatever, looking for under my name. So they searched for my name, and of course, they find for Goldpreneur, but that's not all they found. They found Let's Be Honest, and I got confronted about it, and it was a whole thing. And
When did that happen?
that was that was a year ago this month.
Is that connected, do you think, to being afraid of telling your family?
I mean, I was afraid to tell them regardless because I
Yeah, but
know they have the traditional view. But yeah, because
yeah,
like,
I would think that because first of all, getting confronted is horrible. And
mhm.
mind your own business. Just mind your own business. That's none of your business. Whether Sarah does a podcast called Lesbian Honest. None of your business.
Yeah, so I was in like this group. Yeah, this is a whole story. Basically, it wasn't like a Bible study. It was like a kind of like a 12-step thing, but not like for alcoholics. It was for no matter what issue you had. So
Right.
people were in it for all kinds of things, but it was like a church-based thing. And I was in it because for I need better self-control when it comes to like eating, what I eat and how much I eat and whatever. So I was in it for that. And but they came across the podcast and they basically said that I would okay, so the program is about like 12 months and I was
Hmm.
9 months in when they found
Hmm.
this.
Hmm.
And they were basically saying I would have to start the program over to deal
Because
with quote unquote this issue. And so
mhm.
I was like, screw that. And so I stopped going to the like pulled myself out of the group, and now I don't even go to the church and just whatever. And but during those 9 months that I was in that group, I had formed friendships with some of the other women in there. Um, one of whom would watch my dog for free, like when I was, because she lived here pretty close to me. She would watch my dog for free when I was out of town at conferences, whatever. We had a good friendship. And it's weird because when she found out about the podcast and like I knew she knew, because the rest of the group knew. So like I told her, this was around Christmas time of last year. Or I don't know. And so her initial reaction was actually surprisingly good,
Mm-hmm.
which I was surprised. But then like a month-ish later, she like ended the friendship because
Mm-hmm.
I was because basically I was starting to kind of date at that point, and I
Mm-hmm.
had kind of told her about it to a degree, and I guess that was too much. I don't know. So anyway, so essentially, I wouldn't say I pulled myself out of the group versus them kicking me out, but whatever. Um, I pulled myself out before they could kick me out, I guess I should say, of the little church group, and then my friend a few months later ended the friendship because it was like she could handle the fact that I was gay, but it was kind
Just
of a
don't.
don't ask, don't tell
Well,
type thing.
yeah, it's it's when churches say they're open and affirming. Well, open, oh, they accept the fact but be gay, but don't show me anything about you being gay.
Mm,
Don't date a woman in front of me. Don't,
mm.
make lesbian jokes in front of me. Don't, all those things.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
so she was accepting but not affirming.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's annoying because like I mean she was actually because after I got divorced I redid my will.
Mm-hmm.
And I had her as like the person to take care of my dog if something happened to me. So now I need to go back and change that. But anyway, um and like my family knew about her, and like they don't know about all my friends, but they know about her. And so there's been several times since the friendship ended where my mom has asked, "So, how's so and I don't want to say her name. So how's so and so doing?" Um and I just have to make stuff up like, "Oh, yeah, well, I know she's on a well, she was on a mission trip at one point." So I used that kind of as an excuse one time to be like, "That's why I haven't heard from her." And yeah, so it's just awkward. Like, I think when I do come out to them, I will then address, "Oh, and this is also why you haven't heard me talk about so and so because they bailed on me."
Well, it sounds like that you coming out to your parents is really complicated because in the early part of this journey, you got outed, which is really hard because when you get outed, you're just not ready to be out yet, and
Mhm.
and then you got shunned and shamed.
Mm. Mhm.
So I understand. So first of all, I really want to validate you and understand why this is hard for you because you did
Mhm.
lose somebody that you cared about.
Mhm.
Because when you came out, she was only accepting, not affirming. And she really
Right.
wasn't accepting because if she was accepting, she, would have handled everything better. So, how do you feel now that she's no longer in your life?
I mean, I I guess I could say I'm over it at this point or whatever, but accepting of it. But it was very hard
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for a while there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and kind of bring it back to your question earlier, I suppose the reaction of her and the rest of the church group does probably play a bigger factor than I thought in terms
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
being even more fearful to tell my
Mm-hmm.
family than I already had been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But your family's been pretty good. I
Yeah.
mean, especially around the divorce because I mean, and I don't know how churched they are. Like, are they still going to church? Are they very involved? Or did they go to church when you were young and maybe things have changed? I mean, it really, really depends. And also, there are conservative people who also don't believe that gay people are sinful or anything like that. They just are, they love, there are people that have all kinds of belief systems around queerness.
Well, I mean, I know, I guess some of my family doesn't really talk about it much or bring it, but there's certain family members, one in particular, who routinely says anti-gay stuff. So
Yeah.
that's how I know that
But
it's not just me speculating that they would be against it. It's
so can I give you a story?
oh sure.
My wife, when she came out, her parents cut her off, both her mom and her dad, even though they weren't married. And so for a couple of years, she stayed away from all kinds of family functions. And so her grandfather, after a year or two, was like, where is Tanda? And her mom was like, you don't, you wouldn't understand, Dad. She's just not going to come anymore. And he goes, I understand. And I want my granddaughter here. And what my wife realized, that although her parents were the way they were, her mother and her eventually reconciled. Her father and her never did. He just died about a month ago. Um, is that just because one part of the family says, I'm not dealing with Tanda anymore, it doesn't mean everybody feels the same way. And she also learned that all of her cousins didn't care. They're like, where you been? They just like it, they just, they were her contemporaries. And they're like, where you been? And she was also the oldest grandchild on both sides of the family. So she was the first one there. So, you know, this is the thing, what I have learned is we're never going to make everybody happy. So that one cousin or that one member of your family that has homophobic statements all the time, my guess is there's somebody who may struggle with these feelings themselves. And so they turn it outward against other people because they can't handle the feelings on the inside. You were brave enough to handle these feelings, Sarah. So if you lose one or two family members, that's their choice. But what I find is that a lot of times when we no longer have people in our life that are negative and exhausting, we open up our space to have other people in our lives that are more appropriate for us, for our family, than maybe the birth family that we were born into.
Yeah, that's a good point, that it's not necessarily an all or nothing. Like maybe
Right.
one
No.
or two might have an issue, but the rest might not. And
Yeah.
so
Well, yeah. And so you have to and I can understand why you're scared. And I can understand why your trust is really shaken because of what happened at church. And I just want to tell you, I'm really sorry that church did that to you. That was horrible. And they shouldn't have done that. So I'm sorry. But and I understand why your trust is shaken, but also too, your family had such a great, we're fine with your divorce. And maybe they know. A lot of times moms and dads know.
yeah,
They might quietly think, maybe Sarah's gay. But then you got married to a man, they're like,
yeah.
so maybe when you were younger, they may have thought, uh-oh, but sometimes we don't surprise our families when we tell them.
Yeah, and so many people have told me that, like, oh, they probably know. But I'm like, but if they knew or suspected even,
Because straight people don't talk about it. And straight people don't ask questions because if you're not, they don't want to insult you. Or, you know what I mean? They don't want to say, oh, because for some straight people, not all, for some straight people, asking somebody if they're gay is akin to asking them, Sarah, are you a witch?
oh wow.
It's like, it's not something you would ask somebody because people who are straight and really not educated much about the queer community think it is all about sex, right?
Exactly.
They think it's all about sex, and it's not. And so asking you is like akin to them saying, so Sarah, who's in your bed? And in a conservative Christian family, they're not going to ask that to you, whether it's a boy or a girl.
Mhm.
So, the thing is that, it's because people aren't used to having open and honest conversations with people who are gay about
Mhm.
their queerness. They are just not. We're not going to be there. Maybe at the end of your lifetime, you're about 20 years younger than me. But maybe by the end of your lifetime, we'll be there, but we're not
Mhm.
there. People don't
Mhm.
openly ask people if they're gay, except maybe gay people who really suspect somebody's gay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just my whole thing is like if they suspect that, why would they say anti-gay stuff? Maybe the person saying it doesn't suspect, but maybe others do. Who
Yeah, but
knows?
it's only one person, Sarah.
Yeah,
It's not your entire family.
right.
So don't let one person in your entire family shut down this part of yourself so that your family can know the full Sarah, not
Mm-hmm.
just the Sarah they think they know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then kind of going back to like how to come out and stuff. So originally, like I said, I was thinking about doing the sit down, and then I was like, no, that's just too much. So then I was thinking of doing well, a variety of things like a video or even like a podcast episode, like an episode within Let's Be Honest. And as far as I know, they don't know about the podcast. Uh and so but I could send that and like or so I've gone back and forth with all these different things. I even recorded a video at some point, but I wasn't pleased with it. And so now I'm kind of back to the email idea.
Mhm. Or you could send them this podcast.
Oh,
It
yeah.
embedded in the email.
Yeah.
Because but besides everything else, Sarah, what I'm hearing is somebody who really loves her family
Mhm.
and doesn't want to lose the relationship with them.
Mhm.
And that is one of those parts of this journey that is really hard for the people that may lose their family because they're queer.
Mhm.
So, but I hope your family, you're not responsible for their feelings. They may have and so what I also see is somebody really trying to caretake their family by not telling them.
Mm. Mhm.
And so if you have struggled with being a caretaker before, this is like the example of being a caretaker. You're trying to take care of them, but you don't even know what they need.
Yeah, it's kind of the people pleaser in me too, and I
Right.
don't want them to be disappointed or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, but the thing is that are you disappointed in yourself?
No.
That's all that matters.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, you're happier. You're not just, you're proud of yourself.
Mhm.
There will be people that one of the things I have learned as a queer woman is that you have to learn to let go of the expectations of other folks.
Mhm.
Because if you're going to live as an openly queer woman in this country, and you're in Texas, right?
Mhm.
As an openly queer woman in Texas, you literally have to not, I'm going to swear, give a shit about what other people think. And that's
Yeah.
hard because subconsciously you have been trained since childhood to put everybody else first because you grew up in a conservative religious tradition. So even though
Mhm.
you may leave that tradition, those feelings, to act that way is very ingrained in you.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then as far as like when to come out, like I've had so many like I'll pick a day
Mhm.
and be so sure that I'm going to do it that day and then I don't. But kind of the dilemma I'm in now is that okay, so I'm in a relationship and you met her at Podcast Movement and
Mhm.
she actually just moved in we got a bigger apartment and anyway And so, back before I was in a relationship, or even when I was, but it wasn't like we were living together or anything, it wasn't, there wasn't really like an urgency to coming out. It was kind of like, well, I'll get to it when I get to it. But now it's a situation where, especially with the holidays coming up, I'm going to want to, because her family, sh-
They've
I've
known for
met them.
years, right?
Yeah, and I've met them and they like me, it's a whole thing. And so I'm planning to spend, some of the holidays with her and her family. And so there's no way, like, they have to know before, at
Mhm.
least hopefully sooner than later, before even Thanksgiving, because um, how would I explain that I need to leave early or I'm going to be late or whatever? Like, I'm splitting up my time basically, but it's not going to make any sense if they don't know.
Well, and also too, I think the email's got to go out now.
Mm,
I'm just telling you, because the thing is, a lot of times when families, especially conservative families, meet the partner, they blame your queerness on the partner. And that becomes really problematic because, because your partner turned you gay, which that didn't happen. But
right.
sometimes that's what families think. And so I always like, and a lot of times people do what you do. They like say, oh, I'm not going to tell my family about this because, I don't have a partner or anything like this. But the thing is that you're gay whether you're partnered or not.
Hmm.
Oh, you really, I mean, we're queer whether we're partnered or not. So
Hmm.
I think sometimes the best time to tell the family is when you're not partnered, because
Hmm.
then they get used to the idea. And then when you bring somebody home, they know it has nothing to do with your queerness.
Yeah, and see, that's what my gay friends and whatnot were telling me before I was in a relationship. They're like, "You need to come out before you're in a relationship," and I was like, "Oh, no, it's fine, whatever." But now it's a situation where I am, and it's, you know,
Well, it's time.
yeah. And so now, I mean, there's a couple of ways to go about it. Is I could just tell them I'm gay, but not in a relationship yet, let them get used to that idea. But again, we're still dealing with like a 2 month time frame before Thanksgiving. Um, but I think at this point, I'm just tempted to like come out with all of it and but
Mhm.
make it very clear she's not the reason. Like, this has been a thing for decades.
Well,
Um,
this might be you I think whatever feels right to you, your family, you know who they are as human beings. I think you need to make the decision, but because you're ruminating over little details all over the place, what I know is once you tell them whether it's a great outcome or a outcome, you will feel relief. You don't have to think about it anymore. So
mhm.
we're gonna have to move on. So tell me, did you have a coming out song, Sarah?
Oh, so I didn't have one that like helped me come out or anything, but there is this one song that I really like now. By this, it's a small, like, they're not big. I found them on TikTok. That's how I'm finding most of my music these days. But they're called 76th Street. I think they're in Nashville, which is where you are, right?
Right.
I know they've played the Lipstick Lounge and stuff because they actually have
Mhm.
a song called Lipstick Lounge. But there's a song called Girl and also Lipstick Lounge. That's also a good song. But I actually just found out today they're coming to Dallas in October, so I'm gonna have to go to that show. But um, yeah, that's a good one.
Mhm. Did you have any book or movie or anything that you read that really changed your perspective about your life? It doesn't have to be about your queerness, it could be about anything in your life.
Well, in terms of my queerness, I would say kind of an initial wake up call to the fact that I was at least bi was probably Jennifer's Body
Hmm.
with Megan Fox and the whole kissing scene. And I don't know if you've seen the movie, but
No, I haven't seen that movie.
Oh, there's this kissing. Well, I'm sure you know who Megan Fox is,
Oh, I
right?
know. She's from Tennessee.
Ah,
She's
yeah,
actually she's very pretty.
yeah, yeah. So there's this kissing scene with her and Amanda Seyfried, and it's anyway. Um,
You love
so
it.
I would say that that was life changing in the sense of like, oh wow, you know,
Well, you're like, oh wow, I want to do that.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I get that. How's your life today, Sarah?
I would say overall, definitely more peaceful, feel more genuine, true, authentic, all of that. I think I will feel even more so after I'm fully out because I'm basically as out as I can be without being out to my family.
Mm-hmm.
Because like
Mm-hmm.
my all my friends know my family's not on social media really, so it's like I've been able to kind of be somewhat out.
Avoid the issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think once I'm out to them, especially if the reaction isn't bad, then you know. But yeah, I would say, yeah, more authentic and at peace.
So we're going to promise the listeners that even if you come back for 15 minutes, we're going to tell you what happened once Sarah told her family. And we're also going to share with you like how she's feeling after that, and whether it goes good or bad or whatever. So we will do an update when, but so you guys have to like send Sarah some mojo energy so she can get this done.
Exactly.
Sarah, where can people find you and promote both of your podcasts?
Yeah, so I have a podcast called Let's Be Honest, Candid Convos with Later in Life Lesbians, which you're actually interviewing on next
Next
week.
week. Yep.
Um, and so you can find that in the podcast player um, or directory, or you can just go to lesbehonest.show. And then my other podcast is Frugalpreneur, Building a
Mm-hmm.
Business on a Bootstrap Budget. And that's at frugal.show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How would you describe your life today?
Oh, my life today. I would say that, for the first time, now granted, I did lose my job 2 days ago. So there's that.
But that has nothing to do with all of this. That's just yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Um, I would say I'm definitely more like at peace and happier, especially now that I'm in a relationship that's going well and everything. Um, feel more like in my skin, I guess, or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, like I'm not. I mean, technically, I'm hiding from my family, um, but generally speaking, not hiding as much. Like have more confidence.
Well, this is the thing is that this is new, Sarah. I mean, I
Mhm,
know you're already doing a, podcast and stuff like that, but this is still relatively new for yourself. And so one of
mhm,
the things, show yourself some kindness. There's a
mhm,
lot of it's a little bit complicated why you haven't told them yet, and you're going to. It's not going to be the rest of your life, and then it'll be done.
mhm.
Sometimes having it be done is the best thing of all. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you for being on the show today. It was wonderful to have you. Thank you for being so vulnerable and honest and sharing something that's really real with our community. You are not the only person that's afraid to tell certain people of their family and stuff like that. And I really, really appreciate how open and honest you were today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to Coming Out and Beyond LGBTQIA Stories with Anne-Marie Zanzal. New episodes of the Coming Out and Beyond podcast drop every other Friday. You can tune in at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and at annemariezanzal.com. Be sure to hit subscribe when tuning in so you never miss an episode. And for more resources, articles, videos, and a free downloadable guide for coming out later in life, visit annemariezanzal.com.